I'm Terry Newman. I'm a senior editor and columnist with National Post. And I have with me here today Anthony Koch, who is the managing principal at AK Strategies, as well as a former campaign spokesperson and director of communications for the Conservative Party of Canada. Thank you for joining me today, Anthony.
Thanks for having me.
So we're here today to talk about the King's throne speech yesterday and the reaction to it from both the opposition leader, Pierre Paul, as well as U.S. President Donald Trump. Let's start with the throne speech. What were your thoughts on it, Anthony?
So it was interesting. I mean, the one thing that jumped out right at the beginning was the fact that it was really funny to have the king come and basically give what was tantamount to a land acknowledgement. But beyond that, and I think what most of the coverage actually circulated around, and Mr. Poilievre's response to the speech was very much a reflection of that, was that the actual top line issues that were addressed in the throne speech were relatively conservative in quotation marks. So housing affordability, cracking down on crime, fixing immigration. At one point, I believe there was even a line or two in there about law-abiding gun owners, right? So it's very clear, and I don't know how valuable this is for conservatives right now, but even though that the Liberals won the election, that there's a sort of moral victory for right-of-center Canadians right now in that this government at least seems to be, at the beginning, trying to address some of the issues that have been brought up over the last few years. Now, the Prime Minister said during the campaign that a slogan is not a plan. So he's addressed a few things, but we still have yet to see what the actual concrete actions that he hopes to take are on these issues. But I still think there's enough room for some hope for people right now.
So I think as well, a reporter had asked, Poilievre later in the day, this could have been delivered exactly as you said by a Conservative Party. So yeah, all of those points, which we knew earlier in the campaign, seemed to be what we would call copy paste of the Conservative platform, which was a winning formula for them. In as well in the throne speech, Anthony, part of the purpose for King Charles III to come over here was to reassert our sovereignty against the United States and Donald Trump's threats of making us the 51st state, whether or not those were legitimate or not, those threats. And to do it in a nonpartisan way, which is a delicate balance. Now, how do you think he did there? Did he manage that?
Yeah, I think that, again, barring some of the stuff earlier on in the speech, I think this is what makes our system of government so special in many respects, and what makes the crown so special, is that the king, by very definition, is above partisan politics, right? And the fact that the speech that he reads is not something that he himself wrote. Obviously, there's some contributions from the palace, but he's effectively just reading something that the government handed them and that they ended up approving at the palace. So, and again, in terms of asserting our sovereignty, I don't know how much Donald Trump paid attention or cares, or how much our American counterparts to the South do. But I think it's nice to hear a prime minister, for the first time in a very long time, try to have Canadians reconnect with our heritage and the most important institution in our political system, which is the crown. So it's not just that we had the king come over and deliver the throne speech. It's also that we found a rediscovery of this narrative about Canada and the founding peoples and our British and French heritage, that in a time when the line between America and Canada culturally was starting to get blurred, we have sort of this impetus to rediscover who we are and where we're from. And I think this is all sort of a part of that conversation.
Do you think this signals a change that is going to continue through Mark Carney's Liberal government in regards to the crown and tradition? One could argue that the Liberals have put a lot of power in the PMQ's office instead, which contradicts the power of the crown. Do you think this signals that this is going to be continuing for Mark Carney's government?
I hope so. I think that's where the complication here, right, is Liberals very often say and do nice things, and then the actual follow through is where stuff falls through. And that's where I'm sort of at right now, cautiously optimistic on a number of things. Regardless of the fact that I'm a partisan, I'm a conservative, I wanted to win the last election, I am very optimistic, because I think we all should be, that this government will be better than the one that we just left under Justin Trudeau. So we'll see. It's still very early. I think the Liberal coalition is very interesting. There's different components of the Liberal base that will make certain things very difficult for Mr. Carney in the way of some of the legislative priorities that he laid out. But I think right now, in the immediate aftermath of an election, right after a throne speech, I'm going to withhold judgment to the best of my abilities and give the government a little bit of runway to actually deliver on some of the promises that they've brought forward. But don't worry, in a couple of months, I'll be much more critical.
So hopeful and optimistic then. Okay, so in addition to that, we saw what Pierre Paul ever came out and gave his reaction to the speech. What did you think of that?
Thought it was pretty good, and it's very similar to what I was saying earlier, right? Which you correctly identified. He said, "I'm very happy to see that these issues that we've been bringing up for a long time are now being addressed, at least by name, even by the liberals." I mean, there's a few years ago, the idea the liberals would have addressed something like crime or immigration would have been insane to anybody who was even a casual political observer. But still, re-emphasizing that fact that as of yet, these are still pretty words, and pretty words are great and they're fantastic at the beginning of a relationship. But as you start to progress into the more substantive side of things, you actually have to see some follow through. So obviously, as the leader of the opposition, he's going to do his job. There's been a lot of lofty promises by this new prime minister, and we got to make sure that there's actually some follow through on this, because saying you're going to build affordable homes and cut down on crime and all these things, that's great. But many, many previous leaders before, both federally and provincially, have made similar promises. And as we can tell, we wouldn't be still having this conversation if those problems would have already found a solution. So, good start. Happy to see that the problems are being addressed. But it's one thing, again, we always say in politics, making an announcement is considered the accomplishment. And it's not. We need a little bit more of a private sector approach. It's great to say you're going to do something, but we need to follow up down the road to make sure that what you said you were going to do actually happened.
Right. And when asked by reporters, I believe he pointed that out, and he said the way he would do it differently, given that it was a very much a conservative sounding throne speech, is that he would add how he would get it done. So not
Correct.
just we will do this, but we will do it by getting rid of energy energy restricting bills, or
Yeah,
uh,
creating
calling for the
shovel ready zones, getting rid of
yeah.
the no pipelines law. There's a whole list of things. Exactly. But those
Right.
that follow through, like you said, is the most important part.
Now, we saw, I don't know if you saw, but not long after the speech, US President Donald Trump, who was clearly watching from a distance, and who has been mum about the 51st state comments since the Oval Office, where he basically said, I'm not going to discuss this anymore, but if somebody else wants to discuss it, we will. He took to his Truth Social and he tweeted out the following message. I told Canada, which very much wants to be part of our fabulous Golden Dome system, that it will cost $61 billion if they remain a separate but unequal nation, but will cost $0 if they become our cherished 51st state. They are considering the offer. So I guess he is watching closely. What do you make of that comment, Anthony?
Well, I love the this offer is being considered. It's like there's nobody serious anywhere in this country who's considering anything close to becoming the 51st state. And this is the frustrating part, is in particular for somebody like me, who all of a short year ago would have been classified as probably among the most pro-America Canadians possible, who was very much in favor of further integration with the United States, be it economically or in terms of defense. And taken in isolation, the idea of some sort of joint aerial defense pact between Canada and the United States is a good idea, quite frankly. But given the context of what the president has been saying over the course of the last few months, threats of annexation, all this, whether or not they're serious or not, if this was something that the president wanted, if he was looking forward to closer ties between Canada and the United States over the course of his second term of his presidency, this was about the worst possible way to go about it. There's no political leeway all that much for anybody to support this anymore. And even people like me, who used to be Canada, the United States, best of friends, we should integrate more on a couple of key areas. I even find myself finding that kind of argument distasteful at this point in time. So we'll see what happens. I do think eventually calmer heads will prevail and there will be a time to talk about stuff on their merits. But this president makes things very difficult. So we'll see. And this whole, if he thinks that a $62 billion fee is going to be what gets Canadians to throw down our national identity and our sovereignty to become part of the United States, I think he's going to be very surprised in short order to find, not to no surprise of any Canadian, that nobody's really interested in that offer.
Right, definitely, especially as it's coming in the form of less of a threat this time, but more of a temptation, I think. But still, it still kind of sort of comes off as a threat. But there's absolutely no doubt that in terms of security, NORAD is probably no longer sufficient. and the Golden Dome idea would be attractive to us as well. So I guess we're going to have to see how this goes.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me today, Anthony.
Thanks for having me.